All right, hi everybody, and welcome to this Learn with Google Hangout on going local with Google and about local availability for product listing ads. My name is Nicole Primo, and I'm a Partner Education Manager at Google, and I work on Google Shopping, including local PLAs. So I'm really excited to be with you here today. We have a ton of great content about how the shopping landscape is changing, how shoppers are starting their journeys in-store, online, and those experiences are blurring, and what you can do about it as a retailer to make sure you're finding success with your customers where they are. So I will say that this Hangout does assume that you have some basic knowledge of product listing ads, including how to set up data feeds and how to organize your targeting, your bids, and your budget in AdWords. If those things aren't sounding familiar, we encourage you to check out our 101, 201, 301 product listing ads series so that you can get a handle on those concepts. And then, of course, you're welcome to revisit this Hangout at that time. So a couple of logistical items before we dive into our content. So first and foremost, I'd really love to get as many of your questions answered today as possible. So please do use that Q&A widget you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen to enter questions at any time. And at the end, we'll try to save time to answer as many of them as possible. Additionally, please do take a survey for us before you jump out of this webinar. It's really quick, shouldn't take more than a few minutes, and it's posted on the description of the Google Plus event as well as in the comments. Again, we really do try to give you the information you're looking for, and your survey responses are the best way to tell us what that is. And then last but not least, this recording or this Hangout will be recorded and posted on the Google Ads YouTube page. So you're welcome to revisit it, share it with your friends or anybody else you might think might be interested. So without further ado, we will dive into our content. So here's what we'll be talking about today. We're going to start by looking at local shopping trends, and then we'll move into an overview of how Google's local availability for product listing ads helps you match the challenges of these new shopping trends. Finally, we'll get more into the weeds and we'll do some discussion of data feed basics, how your feeds map to one another. We'll talk about your AdWords strategy for local products, and then we'll finally kind of summarize with some next steps. So first, local shopping trends. So at this point, it's probably not news to any of you listening that technology and technology's explosion over the past few decades has made that millions and even soon to be billions of people are constantly connected across screens wherever they go. So because we're constantly connected, we can go online from pretty much anywhere and pretty much any time. So people's increasing reliance on digital is undoubtedly affecting their behavior away from the screen as well. So what may be surprising to some of you is that starting a shopping journey at a local mall is becoming less and less common. So now what people want, and in many cases what they actually expect, is to know what's available locally before they ever make that trip to the store. And so when they have access to the information, they act on it. So for instance, 94% of people with smartphones look for local information. Of those people, 66% visited a store as a result of their search behavior, and 26% actually made a purchase in that store. So you can see it's pretty clear that getting as much information about your local business and your local products that you sell into the digital space will help you stay top of mind for these shoppers. So while shoppers are doing more of what we like to call pre-shopping behavior, we don't mean to say that local stores aren't important. They absolutely are. In fact, the vast majority of retail transactions still happen in a physical store. And as any shopper knows, there are aspects of that shopping experience that just can't be replicated online. For instance, I'm particularly picky about how things fit. So when I'm in the market for some new clothing, I still go to Macy's when I know they're having a sale, for instance, so I can try on some things. And when my husband was recently in the market for a laptop, he got some specs online, so he knew kind of the basic technical differences between some laptops, but then actually wanted to go into a store so he could get the feel of the keyboard and the screen and actually experience those things in real life. So all that said, if physical stores don't innovate, they risk losing prominence in people's daily lives. In fact, we're seeing trends that suggest that this is already happening. So in the past 6 years, foot traffic to local stores has decreased by 15%. And while basket sizes are growing, they're not growing enough to compensate for the overall visit decrease. So people visit an average of 3 stores per mall trip, and this is down from an average of 5 stores per mall trip in 2007. Meanwhile, e-commerce continues its remarkable momentum and growth. The growth rate of online sales was double that of local sales during the 2013 holiday season. So what can we make of all this? Well, we know that growing offline US retail sales, those rates are influenced by the web. And this is a trend that we expect to continue, with a projected 1 in 2 offline sales in the US being influenced by digital activity in 2017. And $1.8 trillion, that's a figure that indicates the web influence of in-store sales in that same year. So obviously there's a huge opportunity to get ahead of these trends and start planning how you as a retailer will maximize your local sales by optimizing your digital strategy. So this brings us to local availability for product listing ads, which I'm almost certain to end up calling local PLAs at some point in this next section. So what is local availability for PLAs? Well, it's an advertising solution designed to help you match your shoppers with the inventory you've got in stock near their location. So the easiest way to visualize this is for us to walk through an example. So imagine somebody searching for a product on their phone, let's say lip gloss for an event that they have that same evening. With local availability for PLAs, you're able to show that shopper a picture of the product, its price, and let them know that you have it in stock within walking distance, all on Google.com search results. Once that shopper clicks on that local PLA on Google.com, they're delivered to the retailer's local storefront page, which you can see in the screenshots in the middle and on the right. So with local storefront, you get to show your shopper a couple of things. You get to show them directions to your store, the hours you're open, you give them the ability to call you with a single click, and you even give them an option to buy from your online store if you have that product for sale and are using product listing ads. So shoppers can also easily see other items available at your store that are related to the one that they originally searched for. So you can imagine with something like lip gloss, this person might be looking for a couple of different shades or have a couple of shades in mind, and by showing related products, you give them more incentive to visit and browse. So in other words, they can basically poke around your store online before they ever take the actual initiative to go and visit your store in person. Okay, so from an initial list of registrants for this Hangout, there were quite a few of you who seem to work on the execution side of digital marketing, so I'm going to shift gears a bit and talk about some of the ins and outs of working with local PLAs. So to get us started, let's think about some terminology. First, you can imagine that local inventory pairs really well with shoppers on the go who are browsing from their phones. So let's talk about the various ad placements on what we like to call the local ad unit. In other words, it's that slot of several product listing ads that shoppers see on Google.com search results on their mobile phones. So within the local ad unit, a shopper has two possible ad placements that they can click on. On the left, you see an example of a PLA local click. In this ad unit, you see that the tent has local availability with information that the store is 6.8 miles away. If a shopper were to click on this ad unit, they would be delivered to the company's local storefront page, which we just saw, and then they would be able to see the store information as well as related inventory. On the other hand, on that right side, you see what you're likely already familiar with as a regular online PLA click. Because it doesn't have any local store information, a click on this ad delivers the shopper to the product page on a retailer's website where they can learn more about the product and then make an online purchase. So next, let's look at our multi-channel ad unit. In other words, that block of product listing ads that's available on desktops. So in the yellow on the left is that regular PLA online click, which takes the shopper to the product page on a retailer's website. That one should be pretty familiar. For the green and the blue, you can see that the shopper has two click options within a single product ad. So in the green in the middle is a PLA multi-channel local click. I know it's a mouthful, but stick with me. So this means that the ad features a multi-channel product. That is, a product that's sold both online and in stores. So if the shopper ended up clicking on that local in-stock nearby option, they would be delivered to the retailer's local storefront page, again giving them local availability information as well as directions and that phone number for their local store. In the blue, that's the PLA multi-channel online click option. So what that means is, again, this product is sold both in stores and online, but by clicking on this top section as opposed to the in-stock nearby link, the shopper chooses the online opportunity and is delivered to the retailer's online website. So now that you hopefully have some sense of the potential local PLA ad placements, let's get into how you'll actually implement a local availability for product listing ads campaign. So first, you'll need to create and submit 4 separate data feeds that provide the information required to run local PLAs. Next, you'll plan your local strategy and implement a campaign in AdWords where you target your products, set your daily budget, and actually make those bids. Finally, you'll participate in Google's inventory verification program, where we send members of our team into certain of your stores to ensure that the data you're submitting in your feeds actually matches with your inventory. So as you might guess, the next couple of minutes we're going to be going into each of these higher level steps in more detail. But first, I'd like to just caveat that while we hope you're really excited about the future of digital advertising for locally available products, we are still ramping up local product listing ads, which means there's a few caveats to participation. So first, at this time, you must have at least 10 stores in the United States to participate in local PLAs. Second, you must be able to provide those 4 required data feeds on a regular basis so that we can get the information we need to generate your ads. As I mentioned, we'll be going over what these feeds entail in our next section so that you can get a sense of how generating this data might work within your technical operations. But I'll also say that even if you don't think you fit these eligibility requirements quite yet, I encourage you to stick around because we're going to be doing a lot of discussion about what you should be thinking about long term so that when you do become eligible to participate, you're well prepared to succeed. So, without further ado, I keep promising it and it's finally here. Let's talk about creating and submitting your local availability data feeds. So to help you visualize the role of these data feeds, we'll just do a quick review of how they work. So basically, all of the product information used to generate every single type of product listing ad comes from information that retailers submit about their product inventory. This is no different for local PLAs in that what we need retailers to provide in their data feeds is the information that captures not only their online product inventory, but also their local product information, their store information, as well as information about which products are available in which stores. So all of this information, as complex as it sounds, gets translated into a couple of data feeds, and all of these data feeds get uploaded into what's called Merchant Center. That Merchant Center gets connected to the AdWords account where you plan and execute your advertising strategy. And then all of that behind the scenes work translates into what your shoppers see as local availability for product listing ads. So here's a list of the 4 feeds required to run your local PLAs. First, an online product feed provides details for all of the products that you sell online. So this is information like title, description, price, image link, and landing page URL, to name a few. Next, a local product feed. This is similar to the online feed, except that this time you're submitting information about the products that you sell in your stores as opposed to the products you sell online. Third, a product inventory feed. This is the feed that you'll use to submit pricing and quantity details about products in each of your stores. And finally, a Google Places feed. This is where you tell us where your stores are located, when they're open, and other retail location basics. So the top 3 feeds that you see here live in your Merchant Center account, which you can think of as the hub for all of your retail-related product information. The final feed lives in Google Places, which is designed to help you get your physical store information on products like Google Maps. The good news is that many of you probably already have 2 of the 4 required feeds. Namely, if you're currently using product listing ads, you already have an online products feed and you won't need to recreate it for use with local PLAs. Similarly, if you're listing your physical stores on Google Maps, you also very likely already have some kind of Google Places feed, meaning once again, you don't need to recreate this for local availability for PLAs. The last bit of information about feeds more generally is that you'll need to be able to update them fairly frequently. For instance, the online product feed should be updated at least every 30 days, but we recommend more like 14 days to ensure your product availability and prices are as accurate as possible. Along these lines, your Google Places information needs to be updated whenever there are changes to your store information, so like hours during the holidays or your phone number if you move, probably not super frequently. What does need to be updated more frequently are your local product feed as well as your product inventory feed. So hopefully this makes some intuitive sense. So your local product feed is more likely to change than your online feed because it represents physical stock that you may store on site in more limited quantities. So we need that feed updated at least weekly or every 7 days. Similarly, your product inventory feed tells us how many of each product is available in each store. So hopefully, if you're getting sales and shipments throughout the day and kind of moving that inventory around, these numbers will change, and we require you to submit your product inventory feed at least once a day so we get the most recent snapshot. So now that you've got the gist of the 4 types of feeds required for local PLAs, let's actually dive into how those feeds work together to give us a really comprehensive view of your overall product inventory. So I know creating feeds can take a lot of time and resources because without a doubt, we're asking you to coordinate and compile a huge chunk of information that you may not have any other reason to actually wrangle currently. So we understand the concern, and what we've tried to do is engineer a solution where we can get the information we need, but we can do it without making you duplicate the same information across multiple feeds and in multiple places. So the way we've done this is by allowing each of the 4 feeds to map into each other. So for instance, if you sell certain products both online and in stores, they'll have to be in the online products feed as well as the local feed. However, for these products, you don't need to submit information like price multiple times because the attributes outlined in blue basically track information for a single product across the multiple feeds. I know this can be a little bit confusing. It's a new concept. So let's take a look at data feed mapping in action. So here you can see how the information for a single product is easily tracked across feeds and then compiled for a more complete picture of that product's information. So where it's sold, which stores it's currently available in, as well as basic information like title, price, URL, etc. So from the online product feed, which you see on the top, this is, by the way, often called the product data feed for PLAs, but it's synonymous with what I'll call the online product feed. So at the top here, you can see that we grab that ID. If the product is also sold locally, this ID then maps to the item ID or the web ID attribute in the local products feed. From there, the item ID allows us to identify the item in the product inventory feed. So there we gather information about which store codes currently have that product in stock. Finally, using those store codes that we grabbed in the product inventory feed, we start to look at the Google Places feed where we gather shopper-friendly information associated with that store code, and these are things like address and phone number. So I know the feeds piece of local PLAs can get a bit confusing in terms of what's required and how they map together. So at this point, before I transition into more tactical steps for setting up your local PLA campaigns, I'll take a quick moment and encourage you to submit any questions you have about data feeds in the Q&A widget on the right side of your screen. Again, submitting your questions here will make it so that we can discuss what you want to understand better at the end in the Q&A section. Okay, so for the sake of this Hangout, I'm going to assume that you already have an online product feed and a Google Places feeds. So one of the new feeds you'll need to create is the local product feed. So hopefully, as the name implies, and as you remember from a few slides ago, this is the feed that you use to tell Google about the products you sell in your stores. It should be submitted to Merchant Center at least weekly. And in terms of information you'll need to submit. So as I mentioned previously, we're not trying to make you duplicate your efforts. So when you submit information for products that are also fully described in the online feed, you'll need to make sure that we're able to map the information across the 2 feeds by ensuring that they share at least one value for any of the attributes you see listed in blue and green here. So specifically, you could submit the same value for the item ID in the local feed and the ID in the online feed, for the web item ID in local and ID in online, or GTIN to GTIN in both, or MPN to MPN in both. So in the table at the bottom of the slide, you can see that item ID and title are required in all cases. A few are recommended in that middle section, and this is for products that are sold in stores as well as online. Finally, you're always welcome to submit additional product details for multi-channel products if you'd like, but where it's required is that if you have products that are only sold in stores, so in other words, they're not going to show up in that online feed, we need you to give us some additional information about those local in-store only products in your local products feed. So this includes information like title, price, some other descriptions, some other key attributes, and you can see what's required in the local products feed specification article in the Help Center. So again, Basically, what's required in all cases is item ID and title. The only place you're required to submit more information is for any products that don't show up in the online feed. Okay, so the next new feed you'll need to create is the product inventory feed. This is the feed that you use to tell us which products are in which store and how many are available in each store. So you'll need to submit this feed to Merchant Center at least once per day, and it has only 4 required attributes. First, store code. So this is the code you use to catalog your stores, and it must match to the code that you use for the same store in your Google Places feed. Again, think about it like that map. If they don't match, we won't be able to combine the information you've given us in various places. Next, item ID. Again, a similar kind of concept. This is the code you use to specify or identify a particular product, and it must match the item ID in the local products feed so that we can properly map it. So an attribute that's unique to this feed is quantity, and this is the number of items available in the store in the same row. So for instance, it might vary across stores how many of each item is available. So finally, price. This is where you'll submit the regular non-sale price of your item. And note that if you use default pricing across all of your stores, so for instance, Acme bike number 1 is the same price in every single store you have, then you don't need to submit price here. The only reason you would need to submit price in the product inventory feed is if you want to override the prices you've submitted in your local feed. So for instance, if you have store-specific discounts or store-specific pricing based on area, feel free to submit that price in this feed. Okay, so I mentioned that you should submit your product inventory feed at least once per day. So the good news is that there are 2 ways to submit this feed that hopefully make it a little bit easier if you're going to submit multiple times per day. So first is the full submission, and this is what you'll need to submit at least once per day, and it will include information about all of your products in all of your stores following the attribute format that we just discussed. So in Merchant Center, when you register and upload the full submission feed, you'll choose the feed type product inventory. So the second option, if you have to do updates to the multiple updates in a single day to the full submission, for instance, let's say you got a big shipment midday or you sold out on a popular item, you can submit what's called an incremental submission. So in incremental submissions, you only need to include products that have changed in price or quantity since your full submission earlier that day. So in Merchant Center, again, when you submit this, you'll use a different type, this time product inventory update. So as a final tip for creating your data feeds, I strongly encourage you to upload your feeds as test feeds during the creation process. In other words, don't spend hours and hours creating and formatting a comprehensive feed only to then find out that it has errors throughout the entire thing. Instead, start by creating a feed with a small sample of your products and then upload the feed as a test feed. Through the test feed, you'll get a report of errors and issues so that you can address those before adding complexity with several hundred or thousand additional product lines. So in case you're not familiar with test feeds, you can see in the screenshot that it's a really similar workflow to submitting regular data feeds, and the main difference is that you begin the registration and upload process by choosing new test data feed as opposed to new data feed in Merchant Center. Okay, so we've arrived at the section where we'll talk a little bit more about how you should be thinking about your local PLA campaign strategy once you've successfully built and submitted your feeds. So it's helpful to start the process by thinking about your goals with regard to your local products. So following this decision tree, you can see that there are 2 main strategies for building out your local product advertising, namely a separate local strategy or a multi-channel strategy. So based on the questions in the tree, you can see that a separate local strategy offers you the opportunity to allocate separate budgets to your online versus your local products. And it also helps you craft a focus on driving shoppers to your physical store locations. So let's look at a side-by-side comparison of the two strategies just to understand kind of the pros and cons of each. So first, you'll use a separate local strategy if you want a completely separate advertising campaign for your local products. In other words, you want the ability to customize your bids, your budget, and your targeting for your local products. With a multi-channel strategy, you're essentially lumping your local products into the advertising you're already doing for your online products, which does provide streamlined management with fewer campaigns to attend to, but it may not give you the control you're looking for. Next, here's what you'll actually need to execute each strategy. With the separate local strategy, you'll need 2 product listing ad campaigns. So first, you'll keep your existing online-only campaign, and then you'll create a second, new, local-only campaign. For multi-channel, I mentioned it had easier management, and one of the primary reasons is that only one campaign is required. Essentially, you probably already have an online campaign. You'll turn this existing online campaign into a multi-channel campaign by adjusting a few settings. So speaking of those settings, here you can see a quick look at how you specify whether a campaign is local, online, or multi-channel. So basically, it's a simple matter of changing your campaign settings, specifically the shopping channel settings. So you'll find 2 checkboxes, one for online and one for local. So for a local-only campaign, you probably guessed it, you just check local. If you wanted to convert your existing online-only campaign into a multi-channel campaign, like you would if you're using that multi-channel strategy, you simply add a check mark to the local box so that both local and online are checked for that campaign. So back to our side-by-side comparison, here's what you'll get in terms of ad coverage with each strategy. With the separate local strategy, you'll get online products on all devices. You'll get online products on all devices through your online campaign. And then you'll get your multi-channel and your local products on mobile devices through your local campaign. With that multi-channel strategy, you'll get complete coverage with all types of products on all devices. So to put this in context a little bit more what I was talking about with coverage, essentially what this means for your separate local strategy is that your multi-channel products will not show on desktops. That said, as I mentioned earlier, the limitation of the multi-channel campaign is that you have significantly less control over how you promote your local products. So in other words, your local and your multi-channel products will share the same bids, budget, and targeting as your online products. So of course, local PLAs are something we're excited about growing, and we're developing them so we continue to refine advertisers' local strategy options as we see what works for driving traffic to retailer stores and websites. So this is what's currently available, but we're continuing to develop and grow this product as well. Okay, so once you've decided on a strategy and created or adjusted your PLA campaigns accordingly, the next thing you'll need to do is think about creating additional product targets. You're probably familiar with the concept of product targets, but as a quick recap, product targets essentially allow you to group products that you'd like to bid similarly on. And some of the most common product targets are for bestsellers, maybe online, and then bestsellers in store, as well as high value or high ROI items online and in store. So here's what some possible targeting for a local-only strategy might look like. Remember, with the local-only strategy, you have two campaigns. Your existing online-only campaign, which you see represented in gray, as well as your new local-only campaign, which you see in the green. The local-only campaign, or the online-only campaign, already has product targets for online products set up, so you don't need to do anything in that gray campaign. However, since the local-only campaign is brand new, you will need to create targets for it. So to do this, you'll use attributes in your local feed to target your in-store only products, and you'll bid according to their value. To target the products sold both online and in-store, you'll use attribute values from your online feed, and once again, you'll bid accordingly. So here's the comparable diagram for the multi-channel strategy. In this case, remember that you've adapted your existing online PLA campaign to be multi-channel and also target your in-store products. So in this case, you already have product targets set up for your online and multi-channel products using values from your online feed. So that's all set, no action needed there. What you will need to do are add targets for your in-store products, and like last time, you'll use your local feed to do this. So this brings us to some tips for success with local PLAs. So as we discussed earlier, local product advertising is especially relevant to shoppers on the go on their mobile devices. When they're out and about, you want to make sure you get your in-store products available near their current location in front of them. So one great way to do this is to focus on being especially competitive on mobile devices. So to do this, you can use mobile bid modifiers to increase your bids for shoppers on their mobile devices by up to 300%. Again, basically what you're trying to do here is ensure that you're especially competitive on mobile impressions and you can maximize your mobile traffic. Along with this idea of getting in front of mobile shoppers, hopefully it makes sense that you'd want to get your locally available products in front of shoppers who are physically close to your store. And just to be clear here, by participating in local PLAs, you're already showing your ads to people within driving distance of your store. If you want to specify an even smaller radius around your physical stores that you want to be even more competitive in, let's say like 5 miles, you can use location bid modifiers to boost your bids when someone is close to your inventory. So to do this, you'll need to have location extensions set up, but at the end of the day, this location bid modifier helps make you more competitive for shoppers close to your locations because they're the most likely to actually stop and visit. All right, so I know we've covered a ton of information, and I promise you we're close to the finish line, so stick with me as I quickly review what you can expect once you're live with local PLAs. So obviously Google is truly invested in making sure that the information we provide to users is accurate, and this is one of the reasons why we've created Google's Inventory Verification Program. Basically, the program is our way of ensuring that the product data we receive from retailers is accurate and generally high quality. So the program is pretty simple. Basically, within 2 weeks of a retailer kind of starting to use local PLAs, the Google Inventory Verification team will work with store managers to pick dates for a visit that makes sense for the business. For example, we're not going to try to come and visit you on your highest, busiest day of the week, for instance. So on those scheduled dates, 3 to 4 members of our team will arrive shortly after the store opens and introduce themselves to the store manager. At that point, the store manager's obligation is done, and our team will work independently to start locating a list of SKUs around the store. They'll only be checking inventory on the sales floor and won't photograph or disturb any of your products. Ultimately, we know how important your day-to-day operation is as a retailer, so we try to be as undisruptive to normal business as possible. Our goal is that hopefully after we introduce ourselves, you won't notice our team is there at all, and when they're done, they'll depart typically late afternoon. So finally, Once you're live with local PLAs, you'll be able to track your performance directly in the AdWords interface. So by segmenting performance metric by click type at the campaign level, you'll get a better understanding of the various types of PLA impressions you're getting, and you'll be able to optimize your campaign strategy according to what you see. Okay, so we've talked through a lot of intricacies about using local PLAs, but as I mentioned, they're currently only available to a limited set of retailers. So let's finish off by talking about what you can do tomorrow, no matter who you are. You saw this slide earlier when I mentioned eligibility requirements, so hopefully it looks familiar. But at this point, now you know more about how feeds work, and if you can still answer yes to both questions listed here, in other words, you do have at least 10 stores and you can provide the 4 feeds required regularly, then I strongly encourage you to email the alias you see here, ls-get-started@google.com. So by emailing this alias, you'll be able to submit your interest to our team. And when we get your email, our team will review your website as well as your current PLA campaign to see if you're a good fit for local PLAs. So even if you're not quite ready to pull the trigger on local PLAs or you don't fit the current eligibility requirements, there are 3 things that all retailers with physical stores should be doing to boost local sales through digital efforts. First, increase your foot traffic. You heard about how shoppers are doing more pre-shopping online before ever visiting a store. So make sure you're taking steps to bring your local store online through things like your website and product listing ads. And remember, if you're not doing this, that means you're digitally invisible to the millions of shoppers who are starting their purchase journey online every single day. Next, do more with your local stores. So think about how you can enhance your in-store experience for mobile users. I've personally seen some retailers get incredibly creative with mobile apps that help shoppers locate inventory in stores, or even QR codes next to products that can provide online comparison shopping and more information. Aim for being disruptive in this space, and I promise your customers will respond. Finally, try to measure your offline impact. I know this can be tricky, but do your best to understand and measure store visits as well as each customer's motivation for actually coming in. So longer term, we've seen that there are 3 key challenges many retailers eventually face in this new environment, and being aware of them now helps you innovate solutions to prepare yourself for long-term success. So first, you saw just how much data is required to run local PLAs, and I know that sourcing that data on such a regular basis is not an insignificant time commitment for your internal technical teams. So wherever you are feeling pain right now in any data efforts you're currently engaged in, I recommend digging into those pain points and figuring out how you can better source your data and scale the process long term. Next, I don't know if I could find a single retailer who would argue that their ultimate goal is to sell more of their products. That said, we often see that retailers' internal structures and processes may not be aligned to this ultimate goal. For instance, part of the company may focus on online sales, while the completely separate team has the budget to work towards improving the in-store experience. So as online and in-store become more integrated, it's important to assess how your organization can align internal structures to promote that ultimate goal of selling more products via the omni-channel that includes both in-store and online customer experiences. And finally, the great news is that you have more opportunity than ever to explore new avenues of promoting your products and getting them in front of the right customers. The challenge within this, of course, is how do you prioritize each of these avenues of exploration. So I'd recommend thinking about what your goal is, who your customers are, and doing that internal analysis to make sure that your efforts will align with these new avenues of exploration and set you up for long-term investment. So I did a lot of talking, and I know I covered a ton of material. So I'm going to take a minute and look at some of the questions you guys have been submitting. If you have to bow out now, please do take that survey, but otherwise enter any questions you have, and I will start answering them in about 30 to 45 seconds. All right, so our first question comes from Janelle. So Janelle asks a great question. She says, are local PLAs exclusively for mobile devices, or do they just make more sense for mobile only? So local PLAs can appear on both mobile devices and desktops, but you're definitely on to the fact that they make a ton of sense for mobile shoppers. That local information is especially pertinent on the go. So while they are available for both, we are definitely thinking about how to optimize that mobile experience with local availability for PLAs. Here's another great question. See if I can find it in the list. Great. So the question is from Chad, can local PLAs be turned off at times when the store is closed? So as with all AdWords advertising campaigns, you can enable time of day and day of the week bid adjustments in order to optimize for the times when your store is open. So I think that that's a great strategy, and definitely look at those bid adjustments to help you do it. Great question from Michael. So he asks, how would local PLAs be able to handle local pricing? So say at a retail location. So can we determine how those prices are localized? So the answer is that you can submit, as we kind of talked about in those data feeds, you can submit store level pricing in that local inventory feed. So if you have national pricing, you can submit it in your local feed and we'll apply it to all of your stores. Or if, like Michael said, there are specific stores where the same item has different prices, you can submit that information in that local inventory feed or that product inventory feed where you submit quantity as well as price. Great question. Okay, Anne has a question about how the feeds sync. So she asks, how does this sync with inventory management systems? So the answer is that we still need a data feed. Depending on your inventory management system, sometimes you can download or export an XML version of that, but we still need that downloaded or exported file to be customized to the data feed requirements that are used for local product listing ads. So on the event page after the fact, I'll also post some links to the product feed specifications for like local feeds and product inventory feeds so that you can see exactly what's required in each. Good question from Ed. So Ed asks, will you prioritize local ads over non-local PLAs in search results? So the simple answer here is no. We understand that people shop online, they shop on their phones, they shop in store, and they're doing a blend of all of those things. So our goal isn't to favor one over the other, but rather to make them work both for retailers and for shoppers so that retailers obviously get the right products in front of the right people, and then that shoppers find what they're looking for at the right time. Okay, so Michael also asks, can we set regions or zip code pricing information for each product? So for instance, this zip code has this price for this product. So currently you're only able to submit you're only able to submit product pricing at the store code level. So you're only able to do it, for instance, for store X, the price is A, for store Y, the price is B, etc. So I guess you would be able to do it, but it would be a manual process of identifying which store codes are within that zip code and then applying the same price to each of them. So another question, what are the limitations to the product inventory feed? What happens when you have hundreds or thousands of products in each store and thousands of locations? So the short answer is we can handle it. So we can handle all your products across all your stores. And the only caveat or kind of recommendation there would be that for very large files, we recommend that you submit one inventory feed compressed via SFTP directly to Merchant Center. So we can give you more information about that, and I'd recommend, again, looking in our Help Center to see kind of how those options work. Question from Chad. So does the product inventory feed require local tax cost in addition to the pricing? So no, the tax is not included in the price listed in the feed or on the ad in the US. So short answer is no on that one. Great, simple question I can answer quickly. So will the slides be available after the Hangout? The recording of this webinar absolutely will be, and of course you'll be able to revisit the slides in there. Okay, great questions all around. Here's another one. Okay, so the question is, if a local price differs from an online price, will the local price show, and how will that ad appear? So the answer here is that in a multi-channel ad unit, which is the one you saw where it shows on desktops and it would have a product that's sold both online and in stores, and you see you have the normal product listing ad with the in stock nearby link below. So the online version will show with the online price, but when somebody clicks on the in stock nearby and is taken to the local storefront page, that's where they would see the local specific pricing. So again, the multi-channel unit on desktops will show the online price, and then the more specific local pricing will be available on that local storefront page. Great question from Melissa. So how do you track conversions that happen through desktop or mobile store pages? So for this, we would recommend reaching out to, you have a couple of options, but the primary option would be reach out to your Google team if you have one, and if not, you can always try calling our AdWords support team at 8662-GOOGLE to discuss options if you don't have that Google support team for your particular retailer. Okay, so a question from Scott. So Scott asks, will the products show up in the listings on Google Places? Will it be campaign dependent? In other words, to show, do you have to have budget and will you be charged for clicks? So currently, local PLAs will show up alongside regular online PLAs only and are set up the same way as online PLAs and AdWords. So I think the short answer is currently no, and think about it more as a complement to online PLAs. So another question, what is the roadmap for local PLA expansion to Canada? Is there a time frame? So we don't have any specifics at this point. So again, if you have one, I recommend reaching out to your Google team, but otherwise no specific plans at this point that we can share. Awesome. So I think that we've answered all of the questions. I'll let you answer any last-minute questions you want to get answered. And while I do that, I will also put in another plug for that survey of ours. I know it's shameless, but please do enter your feedback. We just do try to give you what you're looking for. So any comments that you have that can help us tailor future content is super helpful and much appreciated. So last chance here. I'm not seeing any come in. So I will just say thanks so much for taking this last hour to spend with us. I know you guys are busy, so really appreciate you spending it with us. And thanks for the great questions. And check out the recording afterwards and talk to you guys soon.